So we have some scores from Harasovitz, it looks like. This is our European vendor, where we get things that are mostly European imprints. This includes a lot of our what we call approval plans, where they send us scores based on what the type of things we said we wanted. So let's see what's in here. We've got a lot of layers. This looks like we have some collected works probably. So individual volume of collected works and study editions of Beethoven, Overture number 1 to Leonore, Overture number 2 to Leonore, more Beethoven. These are all Henley editions, very good editions for our students to use. More packing. They pack things very, very well because these things are coming all the way from Germany. So here we have a solo work, and we get our score, and because it's for violin alone, we won't have a separate part for that, but some of these others for chamber groups will also include parts. These are more examples of things though that are larger ensemble or critical editions, as this one is. Now we've got Liszt Cantata. Liszt is mostly known for his piano works, but there are some others too. More of our Beethoven Baronreiter. We have complete sonatas for piano, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Volume 3, they just keep coming. The Beethoven sonatas. People wonder why we have so many editions of some of these works that are standard, and it's because it depends on what people's needs are. So sometimes people need a score so that they can study it and get a better sense of what Beethoven's intent was, and that's what we use these critical editions for, because they're edited to try to be as close to the composer's intent as possible. But sometimes we also need more performance-based editions, so where somebody wants to have a modern pianist who sort of considers, like, is this F sharp what Beethoven meant, or was that supposed to be an F natural, and make some more kind of heavy-handed editorial decisions. So we need different versions of these. And this is actually, this is probably a good example of something. Yes, it comes with the parts too. So we've got the score, and then 2 separate parts of that. We have to be sure we house it in such a way that we keep up with all of those parts, because the score alone is not as useful for our users as a score in parts is. So these are based on the Urtext, but they're not the critical editions. So these are intended to be more performance oriented. They will be easier on a stand, easier to open, and then some Tchaikovsky, Henley, Bach, and Busoni, Cesson, and then some other chamber works, so piano solo. Goodness, these are turned every which way. And then some other chamber works. So that gets us through that box and all of its massive packing materials. So we can set those aside and let's see what else we have. So next up we have some scores that have come at us, and I was trying to see from the original mailing address if I could guess what vendor sent these, and I have no idea. So we will open this and find out. And that end is open, and now let's get this end. Okay, we have some different packing material, which makes me think we have a different vendor than some of the other things we've seen. We've got scores, obviously. So we start with a Kalmus edition of some Chopin waltzes for piano. The Robert Bloom collection. Now, yeah, this is interesting. With this collection, they've been working on various oboe works for years. Robert Bloom was a famous oboist. So we've got some of these somewhat scholarly editions of arrangements for oboes there. And you can see separate parts for each instrument. Some Astor Piazzolla tangos. These are Piazzolla, obviously, is very famous for his tangos. Jorge Montilla, I don't know him at all, but we've got a clarinet quintet and parts along with the score. Some classic evergreens. So some, I think we would call these war horses. That's a word we use for pieces that get played again and again and again. And so, for instance, most people, whether you know much about classical music or not, you probably know at least the opening of Beethoven's Fifth, for instance. So if that gets programmed on a symphony and you go, you'll have some sense of what to expect from that performance. Flight of the Bumblebee, for instance, that's a tune probably everybody knows. It's been arranged for millions of different instruments, And it also gets used as a showpiece just to prove how agile somebody is on their instrument. And when we talk about some of these war horses, sometimes they're not things that people would necessarily set out to hear because they've been played so much. Some would say overplayed, but they're also very popular music, and in many cases for good reason. Sometimes it's for the sheer virtuosic aspect. Sometimes it's for musical qualities. So yeah, when we talk about war horses, they're things that are the sort of the heart of the repertoire, the bread and butter, the things that get played a whole lot, and the things that people think about when they think about classical music. So one of the things we really work on these days is trying to fill in gaps of composers who've been underrepresented. So people who are from Latin America, like some of these, or much more, women composers, and just people who are something besides dead white German men. And so we're really trying to build on those. And so a lot of that work ends up being retrospective just because these are long-term problems, this lack of representation. So that's something we're working on a lot, and where we're growing. And so yes, it's that big number is always building, but it's and always kind of growing in new directions that we're trying to figure out so we can get what we need for our community.